Hello!
Welcome back.
Indeed, and welcome to the 16th century. Which date?
1588!
So what is...
Stand up, everyone. Give us a twirl. So we are in
Kentwell Hall.
Kentwell Hall, which is literally just up the road from our shop, and we have. Do we call you reenactors? I never know whether you're
sure,
actors or reenactors.
It's different from acting.
Yes, we make it up as we go along.
And proper serious reenactors as well,
Yes.
to the point where your clothes are proper, like not because I know from my from being in the shop, you can buy wool, but that sometimes has 20 or 30% polyester in. So this is all proper, 100% wool and 100% linen.
So if you hear any noises, you may realise that we have various tractors, geese, ducks, sheep, piglets.
Tractors are
very 50s.
Yes, especially with the day glow headphones, I find, ear mufflers.
They have to do the farm work out of hours.
I think that's something important to say because Kentwell Hall is a living
thing.
Yes, yeah. So people, well, the owners live here, don't they?
Yes,
they
do. And it is a working farm.
Working farm. So, as in sheep, cattle,
Pigs.
We watered
Goats,
pigs. You watered
chickens.
pigs today.
Yes.
You watered the pigs.
Chickens.
You watered the pigs. Is that how they grow now? Is
Yeah.
it?
Yes, there's a pig tree.
So it's a working farm, but as well as that, it's opened to the public for special occasions.
Yeah.
So all this week at Kentwell Hall, it's what?
1588.
1588.
The whole
High summer.
Tudor hands-on high summer. Stand on the beam with her spindle, so she might make a great length yarn.
They are doing
Well, when you start, you sort the wool
Okay,
because different parts of a fleece are very different.
right.
So you do a rough sort and you wash it. And what they would have done in 1588 is that the best wool from here would have been sold. So what we would actually have been using is the things that nobody wanted to buy, the grey, the coarse, the short. Actually, we pick out a couple of really nice fleeces when they shear us, so we're making better cloth than we would have been, or that we're pretending to make.
Yes.
So if the owner of Kentwell in 1588 had employed people here, that would be what he would do, but that's just because he does not make his money from cloth. So the master of this manor made his money from the sale of wool. So there were people that were working with the best quality wool, just they wouldn't have been employed on the manor.
Yeah, it was all sold elsewhere.
Yeah, so there was a merchant called the clothier who ran the industry, and he would buy and sell to spinners and weavers and such like, and get the product at the end, taking profit.
Okay. Very interesting.
So, what's the stages? Someone was
So
telling
we
me carding and
Wash
picking.
the wool, dry it. If it's very dusty, you get the small boys to hit it with willow sticks.
Okay.
It's called
You don't
willow.
hit the small boys. Small
And
boys hit the...
Well,
yes,
it's
okay.
because they like hitting things.
If you ever want my small boy to do that,
Ah,
please let me know. Yeah.
Yes. And then you pick it and you card it, which makes it into rolls so that you can spin it on the wheel.
Okay.
Or you comb it. The wool that we have here is not really suitable for combing. That's done for the long wool, but that's what they do in Norwich for making worsted.
Long wool because you've got Norfolk horns. Here.
Yes.
So Norfolk horns are short.
It's short.
Oh, right.
They were broadcloth sheep basically. You know, that's what they were making here was blue broadcloth in Lavenham, in Sudbury, in Melford, Glemsford, and they would have dyed it in the wool before it was worked.
Right.
Which
So fluffy.
So, well, it would have been the fleece,
you'd have
I
a big
presume.
pile of blue fluff.
Just how long? So that hank, hank or a skein? What's
Skein.
That's
So-
skein.
Okay,
Yeah.
so a hank
What?
is a specific measure. So a hank is 840 yards. So this is definitely more than 840 yards. So I'd call that a skein.
Yeah, we've
My
had this
mind is
conversation
broken.
before, and we
we did?
couldn't...
Yeah, I thought a hank,
Pass
from
that
my
back to
research, a
Tom,
hank
please.
was one of those, but a
It
skein
depends
was
on
like
who
a
you
ball.
ask.
No,
Yeah.
so what you're thinking of is what's called as a pull skein, which is a rather more modern thing from machines that wind balls that way, and then you pull it out the middle. So.
Yeah.
If you're interested in that
So,
sort of thing.
how can we get an idea about time of how long it would
Well,
take
they-
spinning?
Piece of string. The
Piece of-
way
really?
So
Yeah.
it's going to be dependent on who's doing it.
Yeah,
I'm guessing,
the
and
way
how
the
much time
yarn
they spend on it.
is paid, the way the spinning is paid for is by the pound, and a good spinner who is doing nothing else can spin a pound of wool in a day. Now I reckon that to do that you have to have a child to card for you, or you have to be getting combed wool from
Right.
your clothier,
Yeah.
because you can't do the carding and the spinning. I've never actually tried to do it in a Tudor summer day, which starts at 5 and ends at 7 in the evening.
I'm Joan Goad, and I'm felting.
And I'm Winifred Hawkins, and I'm felting.
Fabulous, and you've got some examples of your felting.
Look at these.
Yes. This one is still on the block which is very heavy.
I was going to say, I noticed that earlier. It looked quite
yeah.
intimidating.
Yes.
So this is what, because we did talk about this. This is what you were making. You've made today.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I still haven't got this in my head. So you're working with the raw fleece, is that right?
Yes.
But it's been probably dyed already or not. That's
No.
natural.
This is
Yeah?
natural. All of these are natural.
Okay.
Well, the sheep's coloured. That one has been dyed.
This one was dyed once it was a hat.
And you talked about what is the difference between yarn, fleece that is good for felting and fleece that is good for spinning and making yarn with? Is there a particular difference?
You find out as you experiment.
So it's not a case of like this one's shorter or more textured, or this one's
No, I mean,
certain breeds.
If it's too straight, it won't felt terribly well.
Okay.
You want a bit more of a
kinky.
yes.
Because I suppose it's about the fibres
Kinky fleece.
Yeah.
interlocking. is
Yes,
that right?
because it's got to.
It worsens.
It's good when we often use it when it's been combed.
Uh-huh.
Because it's fairly straight then. So when you're laying it out crossways, you've got the better length to tease it out and lay
Yeah.
it down. But then what you're doing is you're wanting those curls to come back on themselves, and as they cross over, they're going to make hundreds and hundreds of little knots, and it's those little knots.
Ah.
And we often explain it to people, particularly small children. We'll talk about it and say to them, have you ever had your hair tangle and have those knots that really
Yes.
and they say, oh yes, and I said, that's what I want my felt to do.
That's everybody pulled a wee face as well.
Yes. And then once it's really, really knotted, it's not coming out.
I'd say not.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to think now in the Tudor times, this would be your job. You would literally just make a hat, and then it goes to who gets the money from that? Is it? We were talking about the clothier before.
We wouldn't be making the hats.
Oh,
Men
right.
will be making.
Oh, really?
So what you would have, say in Long Melford,
Yeah.
there would be a house
And it's heavy.
with a shop unit at the front,
Right.
and behind workshops where men, apprentices and journeymen would be making the hats. The hats will be sold out of the front shop,
Right.
and probably the parlour above the front shop will be the master's office,
Yeah.
where he negotiated things like buying of the fleece.
So this pattern piece made this hat.
Yes.
You've layered it all up,
Yeah.
and you have it all gathered around the top, so it's
Yeah.
overlapping.
So it's all one piece. Yeah.
And then you wait for it to dry to a certain step before you take it out. Or
No, you work it with your hands, so it's squeezing and very gentle movement, and that very gentle movement and squeezing and perhaps a little stroking.
Yeah. Speaking nicely to it.
Speaking nicely.
being affectionate.
Yes. And then you do
depends
that on
the
both
fleece.
sides.
Yeah, so you'll turn
Okay.
it over and do the same.
And you just spend the day doing that, gradually worsening it and
Well,
felting it together.
That probably took 2 hours, 3 hours with this hat. It wasn't very well behaved. It did
No.
not want to.
Some
felt.
fleeces-
Some fleece
what-
will just go, and you're there.
Magic. Yeah.
And others are much more difficult. And then with this one, once I did take it out, it then did start coming together, and then it was just dropping it gently.
And when did you take it out? At what point do
Basically,
you take it out?
when you can pinch it and it comes off all of a piece, so you can feel that it's.
Oh, so it's
felted.
all intact at
Yeah.
that point.
It's all intact.
Yeah.
it's all obviously, since all the action has been on the outsides, it's
Yeah.
better felted there. So when you take the pattern piece out very
You then got
carefully,
to-
you then give the inside a bit of attention so that becomes well felted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In hat
So-
making terms.
Men and women wear these hats.
Yeah.
These are working people's hats.
So is there? Because I noticed you've all got hats on now. Is there some?
No, we've all
These
got
are-
coifs on.
these are
Oh,
coifs.
right.
I would
So
wear.
that's to underneath.
Oh, I see.
I'd wear the hat
And that's
over
we
the
were just
coif.
mentioning. So wool can sometimes be a bit itchy when you overheat, but the coif helps with that as well.
Yeah.
It acts like a
Yeah.
bit of a barrier, so you don't have a scratchy head. Fabulous.
And you're going to carry on doing this tomorrow, yeah?
I will be doing this again tomorrow.
Well, enjoy tomorrow. I hope you got a nice day because I think it's supposed to be nice.
Yeah, so thank you
Thank
very
you so much for your time.
Our pleasure.
So, could you design your hat, your felt hat, any way you like, or did it have to be a certain shape? Or
There's different fashions.
Right.
I mean, at the moment this year, the gentle folk are heading for more straight with flat top, whereas your average worker around the manor is still going for your basic sits on your head.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And the thing
so-
that's going out at the moment
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
the cap,
The flat cap,
which is
yeah.
knitted and then folds, so that that one isn't very good. It should be much sturdier than that.
I'm
Which
going
is
to get my
what
massive one.
Julian's knitting.
Oh, so you're making
You're
one
gonna-
that
And
is
they
I'm
just
making one
sit
at the minute,
on your
and
head like
yeah.
a pancake.
I've got as far as knitting the crown,
Oh,
and
wow.
I'm just starting to knit this portion of the brim.
These were fashionable, especially in black, nearer the beginning of the century, because they're copies of the posh velvet ones that the
Right.
aristocrats were wearing.
Oh, my mind is being blown.
There's just so many variants on what you can. Here is an example
There you go.
of a
Hey,
giant
good
knitted
job.
hat that needs a bit more pulling or shrinking and doesn't really want to.
The fancy band on it would tighten it up a bit.
I thought that.
So what I need to do is I need to find a man with a big head or a woman with a lot of coif on. So some of you may know, I've just started to learn how to dye woad myself, proper. Well,
Woad over
not
there.
proper as in with fresh
Oh, there you go.
woad leaves.
Over there.
Have you got some of
Yeah,
you?
yeah, we've got loads of them.
Oh
I
my
grow them.
word!
You're coming tomorrow.
It's so there's lots of fresh woad. That's
That is fresh woad.
yes, or lambs.
So what will you do? You'll put them in the
Bits of-
pan, boil or hot water.
We
Rip
rip
them?
them up a little bit,
Yeah.
put them in the water, and then we will squeeze them so we get as much colour out. But we will take them from the liquor before we put any other dye stuff in or start the process. But we use Spectralite and washing soap also in the process.
Because in those days they would have
It was fermented.
weed on it.
It was
Yes.
fermented.
And they were, much of it was grown in the Midlands, and it was turned into balls, which makes it easily to transport and to store. Because the thing about thinking as a commercial dyer as opposed to just home dyeing is you've got to be thinking about how do you store the stuff, how do you
Right.
transport it, and that will be
quantities.
fermented in urine. So that's part of the
Wow.
process, is it? All right. I am Robin Hawkins. I am the master dyer, although that's a bit of a fiction because the ladies know far more about it than I do. But it's a male profession. I'm also, I'm going to out myself as a history teacher, and I'm more into the economic and social side of it. On the craft side, I'm still at the, wow, we got this colour side of it. So it's sort of, so they are more knowledgeable.
Enthusiastic.
But I come from it from a slightly different angle.
Fabulous.
And I am Julian Green,
Yes.
and I am a spinner and knitter.
Fab. And you're working
So,
on a
and at
project
the moment, I'm
minute.
knitting a cap.
Like the one
rather
I was
like the
wearing,
one that you were
yeah.
wearing a little earlier.
So you would have spent the day knitting, or are you just knitting because you like knitting?
Well, I am knitting the cap
Yeah.
both as myself and my Tudor
Your
self.
So that's
As my
right, nice.
Tudor self, I would have quite a number of things to do, including cooking a meal, looking after my children,
Yeah.
probably a pig and a couple of chickens and the garden, the vegetable
Yeah.
garden. So I would knit
around that.
So whilst you're doing that, you're then doing
Dyeing cloth, and mostly it will be cloth, although obviously with fleece around here. I mean, the thing with this area is it's fascinating. From after the Black Death, what you've got is, instead of independent weavers and independent spinners, you've got clothiers coming in, so entrepreneurs who are taking over the whole trade, and they're hiring individual people. So as a dyer, we're being hired to dye their cloth. And they're richer than the gentry. So back in the 1520s, Master Smith as a clothier has more cash than the Cloptons. The Cloptons have gone very gentry, but they've made a lot of their money in the wool trade the century before. So that's the, it's like with any knitting and any fibre, you tug at something and you start thinking it through. Today we were using alum as a mordant. Well, alum in our time only comes from one place. It comes from Italy, which is controlled by the Pope, and there's a war. And for 6 weeks, no ships have been allowed to leave port. But then most of our trade used to go through Antwerp, which the Spanish control. And you start, what are we doing? Where are we getting our alum from?
Yeah.
And those are the sort of questions. They're my questions. They're more interested in doing the practical and fun stuff. I'm following those.
Back to the wow, yes.
Back to the wow.
You wouldn't be dyeing. I mean, that's already spun. So you're dyeing cloth that's finished, or the fleece.
Historically, that's probably what I mean. As a dyer around here, we're most in Milford, we're mostly doing great cloths.
Yeah.
But here we're an educational, we're small scale,
Yes. Yeah.
and it's the same with the dye stuff. So there are the purple reed heads that you can get a fine green from if you put in a copper pot, but it's not a commercial thing.
Right.
So we talked earlier about the wool dyeing.
Yeah.
And we talked the fleece was wool dyed.
Yeah.
But is this happening after, when it's already been
It
spun?
well, what you have to do is you can dye it in the fleece, and that's probably how a lot of it was done, but you've got to clean it first.
Yeah.
And then we're actually importing olive oil to put the oil back into the fleece so you can then spin it.
Oh.
But the great thing here is we get to experiment. And one of the experiments where we used to say, it's black's really difficult. Really
Yes.
Well,
yeah,
it's supposed to
'cause
be very expensive, isn't it, to dye something black?
But then you discover in a lot of inventories that middling and poorer people are wearing black. And so you start to think about it and go, well, how do you get a black? And last year we dyed something with walnuts, which doesn't need alum salts, and then we dyed it with woad, and we got a black. And we tried doing it this year. Unfortunately, the first one, the walnuts didn't have much in them, but they'd been left in an iron pot for a year. So we got a quite good grey.
It is
That's a nice grey.
charcoal grey, isn't it?
We overdyed it with the woad to get virtually a navy. And
is
the experiment this week, we finally found some fresh walnut. It's the husks you need, and we found the husks after the squirrels have had the nuts. And so we've got them seeping in water for probably about 3 days, and already it's coming out a great brown. So our experiment to prove, yes, you can get a poor man's black. We think we're going to.
And that's what it was called, wasn't it? A poor man's black.
It's
because it faded after.
Well, it's more that it's not going to be that depth of colour. I mean, with any dye stuff, if you want a good, deep, rich colour, you've got to pay for it.
Yeah.
So on the line, the good reds have got a lot of madder in it, and the very soft.
And that comes back to the woad, where it's like the first one that's dyed is the richer colour, and then the cheaper alternative is that pale.
So the madder we've used already, we'll use on another day and get an exhaust, and it will be a softer, gentler colour.
So will it just be you dyeing, or would you have had, as the master dyed, have you got like 4 like younger boys that?
If you would, it's strength, because you've got a big frame. You need to carry on moving the cloth around. So while you may take on an apprentice maybe when they were 10, I mean the first couple of years they're going to be used, but with all apprenticeships they spend the first couple of years sweeping, collecting, and learning it, and as they get more skill they get more useful.
Watching more, I suppose.
But with this it's the strength thing, so it depends on how rich and how organised a dyer you were, but you're going to end up with, you might have several journeymen, as it were, and the bigger the dye house, the more people you're employing.
We've used the word journeyman a lot.
Yes,
What is the word what does journeyman mean?
Well, you are qualified. You've done your apprenticeship, but you're not yet your own master. So
that makes sense.
then they will be saving up. I mean, with Tudor marriage, you find often that men are marrying about 25, women about 23, and it's because they've saved up enough to then set themselves up independently.
That makes sense, because I know somebody who used the word journeyman because they were continuing to train and learn different things. So that'd be.
That which you're holding, Áine, is a sleeve. So it's just a tube, and you wear it over. What you can see here, my smock, is my underwear.
Yeah. So you'd wear this over the top.
In the same way as when my grandmother left the house, she would not go out without her hat and gloves. Julian Green in 1588 would not leave her house without sleeves.
Yeah.
Because
and
this is her underwear.
And you just slid them. Would they have been attached in any way or just slid on?
They would just, for the most part, they would slide on. The ones that I normally wear, I managed to make them slightly too big around here. So I put a pin to hold it to my kirtle. And I have cloth ones which actually lace to the inside of my sleeve. Here there is a lacing strip.
There was an awful lot of pins. Duke of Buckingham, when he crossed Henry VIII and got executed, they did an inventory of all his goods, and at Stafford Castle there was something like 20,000 brass pins or something, a huge amount, and we found an awful lot of them during the excavation there in the 80s.
Fun.
So you're here for the week, yeah? And you've been doing it for, like the others?
39 years, not just here, admittedly. We have jumped around from the 17th century. In fact, we were in the multi-period as a 1930s film crew, so
brilliant.
We do jump around a bit.
And you'll go to different places where different reenactments are going?
Mostly Kentwell do that, but we do occasionally go to do it in other places, yes.
And I've been coming since 2008, when I came with my then 2-year-old son.
Fabulous.
Who was very good at screaming. And I'm kind of surprised that they had me back again.
See, now what I'm quite interested in is also the madder. Who can tell me about madder? Because for the idea where I want to push the shop is the idea of madder is more associated to Norwich, is that right?
Yes. Well.
No, madder is imported to Norwich.
Yeah.
It's
sold there at the madder market.
But if you look at us, quite a few of us are wearing essentially madder colours.
So this is the madder bag that's been soaking and has been used today. So you can still see the liquor.
We'll get a close up of that in a minute.
Yeah. And it is full of the madder root. You can see.
You died today with madder, didn't you?
You've chopped that up, I presume, now.
No,
it came like that.
Commercially.
Oh, really?
So I fetch something out of the pot.
But it still has the dye stuff within.
It's a bit tangerine.
It is.
Today,
so
today we got a beautiful orange.
So in 1588, they would have still been using madder, yeah?
This looks like
certainly it's one of the...
I think.
The greatest sources of thread can be grown in this country, lots imported from Holland, but then a bit like woad, much of it's grown in the Midlands.
Yeah.
And if you're turning a field from pasture to arable, it's considered a good crop to grow. But some imported
Other things
from
have taken the colour better, haven't they, than that?
Yeah, I can get a really, really orange one.
Get a really, really orange one out.
But the colour depends on if it's a copper pot, you cheer the colour, an iron pot will sadden it. So we were trying to dye for black this week.
If you can find the hat.
The iron pot to
Stop shouting, I can't hear everybody.
So
So hang on, I missed all of that. So you're using a different type of pot to get a different type of colour out of it?
The colour you get, copper pots sort of tend to lift and brighten the colours, and an iron pot will sadden and deepen the colour. So it depends.
That's true of more.
The quality of the wool that we put in, how clean it is, how tight the different yarns.
Yeah, see, that's the bit that blows my mind, because woad obviously doesn't need a mordant, does it, because of the nature of it?
No.
Whereas madder does.
We're talking about this colour.
So how typical of red is that of madder?
That's not the best.
Okay.
No.
Very
if you look on the line,
Oh, right.
the red at the end is the vet.
Yeah, see, that is just fabulous.
Yeah.
That takes a lot more red, a madder, or a lot more of a particular mordant?
No, it's the temperature and the quantity of dye stuff.
Right, okay.
Madder's very temperature sensitive. If you get it too hot, you get a reddy brown, and there are other things that give brown.
I'm Tom Tim.
And I'm Beth the Weaver. I do have a surname, but everybody calls me Beth the Weaver.
Fabulous. And you have a lovely bit of
We have a
woven
piece of
material.
cloth.
Yeah, so this is what we pulled off the loom yesterday, I suppose, wasn't it? When we
Day
put the
before.
new day before, yeah, when we put the new warp on. So we wove this the last time we were here in midsummer, which was in June, I suppose, wasn't it?
Aye.
And then this event Beth bought a new warp.
So that's your main skill, weaver. But you said you do a bit.
Yeah,
of
so
everything.
I always put down. So the way these things work is you fill out forms at the start of the year and say what do you want to do, and I always put down woolshed, dyers. Sometimes I'm in the forge as well. So in the colder months, I try and do the metalwork because it's a bit warmer than sitting out here and it's drafty.
Just right.
Yeah, in the summer months, it's quite nice to be out here. So occasionally, I've helped on the dyers quite a bit. And when Peg had little children, she needed some help, so I was carrying pots for a bit. But mostly, I'm the weaver. So.
Yeah.
So as a bloke, just explain your clothes here. You made them?
Yeah. All of us have made all our clothes. We don't get given them.
So a bloke, are you a traditional bloke or
so
of your age?
Well, I suppose just clothing. So I think the only major change is that very young boys are still in petticoats because it's easier to get them to go to the toilet. So petticoat, as in like a dress, effectively. And then once you reach a certain age, you wear hose.
So you're out of the petticoat.
Yes.
That's good.
So
I'm 20 for context. Go on, hold the clock.
Yeah. Stand up so we can see.
So these are hose, and this is like I'm a man now type thing.
Okay.
Well, at least not still weeing against a tree type thing.
And the stockings, is that what they're called?
Yeah, never hose. So these are actually tights because I'm cheating, but
Okay.
most of them would have had them sort of just above the hose. The only trouble is when you have stockings, you garter them, and there is a very fine line between sort of holding your stockings up and cutting off your blood supply.
Yeah, I bet.
So
Yeah.
tights are easier, but tights are not Tudor.
Okay.
And then I've got under here I've got a petticoat that's sort of, or a paw point. There's sort of got lots of different names. That's holding my hose up, so it's all laced together. And then I've got my doublet.
So you're quite literally held together with all of that all the way up.
Yeah.
and your
It goes all the
trousers
way.
are tied on.
Vest goes over his shoulders.
So we were talking earlier about dyeing, weren't we, and the colours. So this would have been.
So this is blue. This is actually slightly stronger blue than is probably completely authentic.
Okay.
But it's
Oh, I don't know.
it's
We've had-
it's a good blue.
Yeah.
And they would have got that from what?
From Woad.
From Woad.
Yeah, this is a good Woad. Woad's cheap.
Yeah.
Woad is grown a lot in the Low Countries and around these parts, and so it's commercially available because it's grown as a commercial dye stuff, and you can go out and buy it cheaply. So this isn't unusual. This is sheep colour. This is sheep colour.
Yeah. And the
The
hats.
linen I've got underneath
Oh,
is just linen colour. It's raw linen.
And the linen, because I'm fascinated about this. You'll wear it all week, won't you?
So I've
they-
changed my shirts. So I've got
But
four
because they
shirts.
didn't. I don't know about the washing because linen is good with eating the bacteria, so you don't smell as much.
So
Yeah.
linen you
Yeah.
wear next to your skin.
Yeah.
Anywhere that you've got things that are going to need washing. So on your head, I mean, caps have linings, hats generally have linings. Your shirt or my smock, and anything else that's against you,
Yeah.
goes in a bucking tub, which is basically bleach washed with soap.
What, at the end of the week or every night?
It depends on what you can afford.
Oh, right, okay.
But linen dries quickly. So if you wash your smock at night and hang it up next to the fire, it'll be dry to put on in the morning.
Yeah.
Cotton doesn't. So
No.
people don't believe this, but it is one of the advantages.
Of linen.
I do encourage people when they come into reenactment, it's expensive to buy linen cloth, but it's worth it
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you don't need so much, and it's comfortable to wear when you're sweating away in several layers of wool on a very hot day.
I love the fact that you've actually just made this while
Yeah.
here, up there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's one in process at the minute, one in the process of being made upstairs at the minute.
Yes, there is
there?
a piece on
Yes.
the loom.
There's
Yeah,
a
we
piece on
got
the
a
loom.
blue and white
Okay.
check up there.
Yeah.
It's a sort of beige and white brown.
So tomorrow you'll both go up there and you'll be weaving all
Yeah.
day tomorrow.
Well,
do you know,
he'll-
or would you be?
I'll weave when I'm not doing other stuff.
He'll weave, I'll be spinning because we're very short of weft yarn,
Yeah.
and winding his quills for him, which is what the apprentice ought to do for me. But
So you'll explain. You're going to have to explain this
Yeah.
whenever we do the
the
cutaway.
thing is that I'm a weaver in real life,
Ah.
and
Tom can only weave when he's here, so I let him weave.
Oh,
I do have a loom at home, but it's very small, and I'm a student, so I'm not very often at home, so I don't get a chance to do bits and pieces. But Beth's house is just a loom shop, essentially, isn't it? So what Beth meant when winding quills is that this is a shuttle, and this is one of our main tools, and this is what we use to pass the weft through the shed of the warp.
that thing.
So
Well, you sort of throw it.
Oh, you throw it. Oh, right.
Too. Yeah, you throw.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So looms work by having shafts that lift and lower threads, and then it creates a gap, and that's called the shed, and the
that's
gap's
where
what
you
you
chuck
throw
it.
the shed.
Yes.
So you hang on to one end and chuck it.
It's one of the things I say to people is when they talk about weaving, they go like this. I say, no, that's sewing. Weaving always goes like that.
Because I did wonder, because it does shoot across.
Yeah.
So what's in here is a small piece of quill, which is what the weft is wound onto. You probably can't see it from here, but it's a small piece of quill that we wind the weft onto, because the papers that we have on the wheels, they're too big to fit in here.
Right.
So it's just you put too much on. So you can spin directly onto quills, but it's just a bit of a faff.
Yeah.
And we're going to be speaking to someone in a minute who will have actually spun that. Is that right?
Yeah, so I think this was me, wasn't it, this morning?
That was
I know
either you or me.
Well, it's a bit lumpy. It might be me if it's a bit lumpy. So yeah, so this morning we were
It
ready
could
to
be
weave.
Annie's.
That's well, no, because she wasn't doing grey, was she?
Either way, somebody has done it.
So we were ready to weave this morning, but the problem was that we didn't have any yarn. So before the public got here, Beth and I just sat down and spun 2 or 3 cops, and that kept us going through the rest of the day. This is Romney. So this is fleece of a long staple. And the first step is to tease out the locks, such that the oil may go within.
Is there such a thing of having it too loose? Or you spread it too much?
It's all about getting blitzed and held. It's probably about enough, actually.
Really? I'm glad I contributed a tiny bit.
So the first thing you need to do is once you have your teased out fleece, you must have a little water and a little oil upon it, such that it slides over the combs easy enough. Combs such that the lock doth face in all the same direction. Take it from one to the other, like that. Right, and the rest, Beth. And what this does is it takes all of the fibres that you would not have, all the short fibres that you cannot use for worsted, and it takes them out and leaves them on the base of the combs. When we draw this off, all we'll be left with is the long fibres. So you take it from one to the second and then back to the first, thus. And then mayhap back to the second again. And that is all there is to combing. It's about done many, many times to get many, many rovings.
So you lot are here all week, and are you all sleeping here as well?
Yes.
That's dedication. So you're here in the evening. The public then come in at what time?
11.
11, and then technically you are fully enrolled. Rules? Are there any strict rules?
No,
You're
No?
not meant to come out of character ever.
you're not meant to talk to people you know as though you know them, because it doesn't work if they're not
And how do you find reacting with the public when they come up and chat? Do they?
Well,
What sort of things do they ask you?
Well, they approach you in different ways.
Yeah.
Some are, some have been before and know what to expect. Others are very up for it and are perfectly happy to chat with you. Others you need to coax in. You say something so they don't feel quite so strange.
Yeah.
So your life relates to them.
Particularly younger children, sort of primary school age and just above, will often try to catch you out. So they'll insist on talking about the television or their mobile phone, and, which of course we don't know about.
No, of
Yeah,
course.
a lot of people think they're bothering you. So they can I just disturb you? And they really into it, that they think that actually we are working, of course, but we're working to show.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they don't want to disturb us at our labours. And
Yeah.
they say, no,
Actually,
you can
yeah.
come in.
There's
please
kind of
ask
two
them."
ends to the spectrum in what we do. So there's people at sort of the end that Beth and I are at, where we're perfectly happy to work all day and we'll talk about what we're doing, but we don't do, we don't talk about a lot else. And then there's people at the other end that purely and utterly talk about politics or what's going on at the day,
Oh, right.
or the sort of hardcore history stuff. And then
Yeah,
there's
see, I'd be-
most people are sort of in the middle.
Thank you very much
Yes.
for sharing all the
Fascinating.
information. They do this regularly throughout the year at Kentwell. There's always some sort of reenactment going on at
Yeah,
some
and
point.
different periods as
Yeah,
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So check out website details and everything will be down below.
Yeah.
But that's it. Thank
Yes.
you all very much. Thank you for watching. And I've got a special goodbye.
True Tudor style. Farewell.